My name is Jake Meyer. I am a senior student in the computer science degree path, and my presentation will be on whaling attacks. So, whaling attacks are a form of spear phishing attacks in which we use personal and identifying information targeted towards a specific target to attack, in this case, a high level executive, C-level executives, CEOs, CFOs, people of that caliber. An attacker would use typical social engineering exploits in order to gain access to a high level executive's data or to coerce that executive into performing some action that would benefit the attacker, such as a wire transfer or to send the attacker valuable documents or to gain access to the company's network in order to execute much larger attacks. Um, as always, spear phishing attacks are going to be harder to detect since they will contain information that will be very similar to legitimate emails that the target probably already interacts with on a daily basis. And that's the point of these spear phishing attacks. So, while everybody, in one form or another experiences phishing emails and phishing attacks, and a lot of people have a good idea of what to avoid, these kinds of attacks, these spear phishing attacks, still tend to be more difficult to detect and have a higher success rate due to being so difficult to detect. Whaling attacks, in particular, since they are directed at a very specific target and will most likely be given more time and care when being crafted than a typical attack or a typical spear phishing attack, since they're directed at such high level executives. They have a substantial success rate as well. As we can see from the graphic, we see about 30% of whaling emails are opened by their targets, and this percentage may just be out of reported incidents, since a lot of social engineering attacks go underreported due to the target being embarrassed or just the seeming incompetent. But we see that about 60 to 70% of CFOs admit to falling prey to an attack when asked in private conversations. This is just really to show that these attacks are popular and very successful, and they yield high rewards for those who implement them. So it's very likely that they'll continue to be on the rise. Um, so the four main signs of a spear phishing attack are going to be urgency, high risk, low effort, specific details, and impersonation. So with urgency, the attacker really wants to put a time pressure on the target. For example, we have to wire company X this money in 2 hours, or we're going to lose their business. And with proper research, an attacker will know to put this business that they know that the target does a lot of substantial dealings with, which really increases the time pressure. And that time pressure is really just to cause the target to have their judgment clouded by stress, and increases their chances of success in the attack. Um, High risk, low effort employs the principle that an easy task that will resolve a difficult issue is far more appealing to just get it over with, rather than go through proper channels of security and such. When used in conjunction with urgency, this can lead to a lot of executives just to completely skirt protocol and just handle the issue right then and there, which results in a successful attack. Using specific details and impersonation go hand in hand, really. Using identifying details to convince the target that you're a legitimate source of information, and to use impersonation to back that up and spoof your email. It's really going to make for a very successful attack. An email from Bob at your company name here.com is not going to be very successful, but an email from Brenda in HR, you're going to open that email. It's very likely. Whaling attacks are not only prevalent, but they are very successful. Many companies have already been hit and have resulted in huge data breaches and substantial losses for those that have experienced such an attack. Seagate, Snapchat, FACC are just a handful of hundreds of companies dealing with losses from whaling attacks. And of course, most attacks go underreported, so there are probably many more that we are not aware of. Um, so, as with any spearfishing attack, whaling attacks are going to be harder to recognize since these will specifically be crafted for a target and will contain, information and familiar material that will make it seem legitimate. Some things to always look out for, as with any phishing attack, though, are misspellings, requests for money, a sense of urgency, things that are pushing you to do something against your better judgment, and really, trying to trick you, and just to be on the lookout with something like that. Of course, implementing software and email security technology is some of the best techniques to properly filter out and identify whaling and spearfishing emails and attacks. However, in my opinion, I believe that really proper training of employees, in security protocols and generating security awareness within a company is the most effective form of defense. So really training. And since really it is human error and it's the gullibility of people that these attacks rely on, and that most social engineering attacks rely on, exploiting people's urge to be nice and to be pleasant and personable, and that's where people get exploited, and that's why there's just such devastating attacks. So I'd like to show a short demo, just how easy it is to gain some attack vectors on a company. And so just for example, Dr. Mangold, I know you are familiar with Coalition Incorporated, and I'm sure you know their CEO, Joshua Mata. So, we can, of course, look at his profile here on LinkedIn, and these LinkedIn is really a great source to get a breakdown of a company's structure. So we can take a look at his profile. We can find his Twitter from there and see what information we can glean from his followers. Of course, this also opens us up to being traced using accounts. So really using fake accounts is the best way to go about this. But we can also see from LinkedIn, we can get access to his executive assistant. We can see her Instagram. We can see that she has a Pinterest. And through this, we can maybe generate a spearfishing Pinterest email, very similar to the one that I use to as my demonstration of a phishing attack on you, using a LinkedIn message from Joshua Mata. So these are just some examples of ways to gain access to a company and to gain access to their structure and really understand them and how to attack. And these are all just open source intelligence ways of gaining that information, and using more advanced techniques, we'd be able to gain even more information and hopefully engineer a successful attack. Something to mention here is that stacking phishing attacks, or at least that's what I call it, such as phishing a lower level person, such as Joshua's assistant, in order to gain access to company email or a familiar template that we could use to then phish Joshua or spoof her email address. Is a really good way, but it also opens us up to being discovered, or having issues with that. Whaling obviously poses a huge threat to industry since there's such huge losses on the line for these companies, and C-level executives, most of all, need to be on the lookout for possible attacks targeted at them. However, it is important to note that many large companies don't put as much focus on such attacks since they may have, the resources or insurance coverage or just sheer capital in order to write off such, these massive losses. But mid-size and small businesses will really be the ones that need to be the most alert, since they may not be able to afford proper training of their employees or insurance, or they just don't have the capital to cover such a devastating attack, and they can't really afford to take such a big hit. In conclusion, whaling is a threat on the rise that is costing huge sums of money to industries across the world. The best remedy is proper training in these attacks, phishing attacks, spearfishing attacks, whaling attacks for C-level executives, as well as the minimization of attack vectors, such as closing social media accounts, implementing secure practices, not only in the business environment but also in your private life, can really help to limit, the amount of open source intelligence that an attacker can gain on you. These attacks won't stop anytime soon. And a lot of attackers are aware that making a lot of noise tends to get them caught. But, who wants the little fish when you can catch a big one? Thank you.